Hi and welcome to my channel. The story begins with me, Jason, a 38-year-old software engineer living in Santa Monica, California. My wife, Lila, has been a well-known beauty blogger for the past year. She's 34. Her rise to fame almost meteoric after a few viral videos showcasing her makeup tutorials and personal style advice. With over 1 million followers on Instagram and YouTube combined, she's always juggling collaborations, sponsorships, and events. Life feels like a whirlwind when you're married to someone with that kind of presence. I used to be proud of her success. Watching her find her passion and flourish in an industry she loves brought me a lot of joy. We'd been married for 7 years before this fame struck, and I believed nothing could shake the strong foundation of trust and love we'd built. But in the past few months, something has been different. It started subtly. Her phone was suddenly glued to her hand more often than usual, and late-night notifications seemed endless. Work emails, she'd say, brushing it off. Then there were the frequent trips to Los Angeles, where all the big blogger events and collaborations took place. It's just networking, she'd explain when she returned home with bags full of PR packages and stories of glamorous parties. One day, after her second consecutive weekend at a creator retreat in Palm Springs, I noticed she was wearing a bracelet I hadn't seen before, a sleek, minimalist design, not her usual style. "Oh, just a gift from the sponsors," she said, smiling. But something in her tone felt forced. There were also the increasing selfies and posts with male bloggers and influencers. I shrugged it off at first. This was her world, and I wasn't going to be the insecure husband. But when one particular guy, Ethan, started appearing more often, a fitness influencer from San Diego, known for his charming personality and a body carved out of granite, I couldn't ignore the tightening feeling in my chest. "You're always bringing up Ethan," she said with a laugh one night when I joked about their recent collaboration. "He's just a friend, Jason. Don't be silly." It didn't help that her behavior at home had shifted. She was distant, distracted, even during the rare moments we spent together without her phone buzzing. Her laugh, once spontaneous and full of warmth, felt more like a performance. And the nights she used to curl up beside me on the couch, chatting about her day, had dwindled to nearly none. The tipping point came last Thursday when I found her suitcase still half-packed in our bedroom, even though she'd returned 2 days earlier from yet another trip. Among the clothes was a crumpled receipt from a luxury spa in Beverly Hills, a place she never mentioned visiting. On the receipt was a charge for a couple's massage. When I asked her about it, she barely flinched. "Oh, that," she said, waving her hand. "It was just a team-building thing. Everyone paired up for massages. Nothing weird about it. But it was weird. Everything about her lately was weird." That night, as she fell asleep beside me, her breathing steady and her face serene, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on. I had to find out what. The suspicion gnawed at me like termites eating away at wood. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid, but the signs were piling up. The next morning, Lila had a Zoom call with her manager, or so she claimed. She shut the door to the home office, something she rarely did unless she was editing videos. I lingered nearby, pretending to fix the coffee maker, straining to catch snippets of her conversation. "Yeah, I think Saturday should work. I can make up an excuse. You won't question it," I heard her say, her voice barely audible. My pulse quickened. Who was he? Why would she need an excuse? I couldn't hear the rest. She laughed lightly, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in months, then ended the call. When she stepped out, I asked casually, "How's the manager?" Her eyes flickered briefly, a tell I'd come to recognize. "Oh, it was just about some upcoming collaborations," she replied. "Standard stuff." Her voice was smooth, practiced like a politician deflecting a question. Over breakfast, she was on her phone, typing rapidly. I caught glimpses of her screen, a flurry of messages on Instagram, most of them to usernames I didn't recognize. "Big plans this weekend?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. She looked up, startled for a fraction of a second before slipping back into her easy charm. "Oh, I might head to that new spa in Malibu. Everyone's raving about it. You should come along." It was an odd offer. Lila and I hadn't done anything just us in months. "Maybe," I said. "Work might keep me tied up, though." That night, after she fell asleep, I found myself doing something I never thought I would, snooping. I hated the idea of invading her privacy, but the unanswered questions were driving me mad. Her phone was on the nightstand. I knew her passcode. It hadn't changed in years. With a deep breath, I unlocked it and started scrolling through her messages. Most were mundane, chats with her followers, her manager, and some influencer friends. But then I saw a string of messages with a contact saved as EJ and my stomach dropped. Ethan. The conversation was friendly at first, peppered with emojis and inside jokes, but the deeper I scrolled, the more intimate it became. EJ, can't wait to see you again this weekend. Last time was incredible. Lila. I know face blowing a kiss, you always make me feel so special. Counting the days. I froze, my hands trembling. The timestamp on the message was from that afternoon, shortly after our breakfast conversation. What was more damning were the photos she had sent him. Candid shots of her in a sundress, a playful selfie in her bathrobe, and, most gut-wrenching, a photo of her lounging in the very hotel room she claimed to have booked for a brand retreat. I quickly took screenshots and sent them to my own phone before putting hers back on the nightstand. My head swam as I stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. Lila, the woman I had built my life with, was seeing someone else. Ethan, of all people, but one question burned brighter than the rest. How far had this gone, and was it too late to stop it? The next morning, I couldn't shake the dread that had settled in my chest. I had to confront Lila. The idea of her brushing this off or lying outright churned in my mind, but I told myself that maybe, just maybe, I'd gotten it wrong. Maybe she'd come clean, and we could try to salvage what we had. She was in the kitchen, pouring a glass of orange juice when I stepped in. The sunlight streaming through the window caught her hair, making her look radiant, and for a moment, I felt an ache in my chest. I wanted this to be a misunderstanding so badly. Morning, she said cheerfully. Do you want some toast? I shook my head, my voice heavier than I intended. Lila, we need to talk. She glanced at me, the lightness in her expression dimming slightly. Okay, she said cautiously. What's up? I gestured toward the living room, wanting to talk away from the distractions of the kitchen. She followed me, her brow furrowed as she sat down on the couch. I took a seat across from her, trying to keep my emotions steady. Lila, I began, I need you to be honest with me. Is there something going on that I should know about? Her confusion looked genuine, too genuine. What are you talking about? She asked, tilting her head. I took a deep breath. I've noticed things, Lila. The trips, the late nights, the way you've been distant. And then there's the messages. Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly schooled her expression. Messages? What messages? I saw them, Lila. I said firmly. Between you and Ethan. The ones where you talked about last weekend being incredible. The ones where you called him special. She blinked at me, her mouth opening and closing as though searching for words. Finally, she shook her head. Jason, I don't know what you think you saw, but you've got it all wrong. Ethan and I are just friends. Friends? I scoffed, the bitterness seeping into my tone. Friends don't send selfies in bathrobes. Friends don't meet at hotels for couples massages. Her face flushed, and she sat up straighter. That wasn't what it looked like. Those messages were out of context, and the hotel was a work thing. We were meeting with sponsors and stayed late. There was nothing inappropriate about it. I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. Do you honestly expect me to believe that? After everything I've seen? Yes, I do, she snapped, her voice rising. Because it's the truth. I can't believe you're accusing me of this. Do you even trust me at all? Trust? I shot back, my frustration boiling over. How can I trust you when everything you've done lately screams that you're hiding something? She stood up, pacing the room now, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. You're twisting this into something it's not. Ethan is a colleague. We work together. Nothing more. You've always supported my career, Jason. Why is this any different? Because you've never lied to me before. I said, standing now too. Your behavior has changed, Lila. You've been distant, secretive, and now I find messages that... I broke off, trying to steady my voice. They don't sound like the messages of someone who's faithful to their husband. Her eyes glistened with what might have been tears, but her voice was sharp. I don't know what else to say to convince you. I'm not having an affair, Jason. You're letting your imagination run wild, and it's not fair to me. Not fair? I echoed, feeling a wave of anger rise in me. What's not fair is how you're making me feel like the crazy one when the evidence is right there. She stopped pacing, staring at me with a mix of defiance and hurt. I can't change what you think you saw, but I'm telling you, you're wrong. I would never cheat on you. The conviction in her voice made me hesitate. Was she lying, or had I jumped to conclusions? The uncertainty made my stomach churn. I want to believe you, Lila, I said finally, my voice softening. But I don't know if I can right now. Something doesn't add up, and until it does, I don't know where we stand. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and she didn't reply. The silence between us was deafening, filled with all the things left unsaid. After that conversation, things between us were ice cold. Lila maintained her innocence, insisting I'd misread everything, while I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that she was hiding something. The next few days passed in strained silence, each interaction between us clipped and tense. I tried to bury myself in work, but my mind was constantly elsewhere. The unanswered questions consumed me. Was I being paranoid, or was she gaslighting me into doubting what I knew I'd seen? I replayed our confrontation over and over, analyzing her words, her tone, her body language. Then, Saturday arrived, the day she'd mentioned during that Zoom call. My chest tightened as I watched her prepare to leave. She told me she was meeting a few local influencers for brunch and a brainstorming session, but I couldn't ignore the way she'd fussed over her outfit, applying just the right amount of makeup and spritzing herself with perfume I hadn't smelled in months. "You're really going all out for brunch," I commented as she adjusted her hair in the hallway mirror. She glanced at me through the reflection, her smile faint and distant. "It's a big networking event. First impressions matter." I nodded, pretending to buy the excuse. "Where's it at?" "Some rooftop place in Venice," she said casually, picking up her purse. "I'll be back by the afternoon." My heart raced as I considered my next move. "All right," I said, keeping my tone light. "Have fun." As soon as the door clicked shut behind her, I grabbed my keys. I'd never done anything like this before, but the uncertainty was eating me alive. I needed to know the truth. I waited until she was a few blocks away before starting my car, keeping a safe distance as I followed her through the streets of Santa Monica. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, a mix of adrenaline and dread coursing through me. She drove past the main strip of trendy cafes and boutiques, the areas where brunches and blogger meetups were common. Instead, she turned onto a quieter road, lined with mid-range hotels and private residences. Finally, she pulled into the parking lot of a boutique hotel. I parked across the street, watching as she stepped out of the car, glancing around briefly before heading inside. My heart sank. I waited a few minutes, debating my next move. I didn't want to confront her without being sure of what was going on. Gathering my nerve, I got out of the car and crossed the street. Inside the lobby, the receptionist looked up from her desk as I entered. "Good morning," she said, her tone polite but detached. Iraplia, feigning nonchalance. "I think my wife might have checked in earlier. Can you tell me which room she's in?" "Her name is Lila." The receptionist gave me a practiced smile. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't disclose guest information." I nodded, pretending to understand. "Of course. Thanks anyway." I lingered in the lobby for a moment, scanning the room. My pulse quickened when I spotted a familiar figure walking past the far end of the hall. It was Ethan. He was dressed casually, his signature confidence radiating as he moved. He didn't notice me, but I was certain of what I'd seen. A cold wave of anger and heartbreak swept over me. Without thinking, I moved toward the elevators, catching the door just before it closed. My hand hovered over the buttons, hesitating. Did I really want to see this? Did I want the truth, no matter how much it hurt? I pressed the button for the third floor, the one Ethan had headed toward. The ride up was agonizingly slow, my mind racing with possibilities. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped out into the hallway and spotted them immediately. Lila and Ethan were standing near a room at the far end of the hall. She was laughing softly, her hand resting lightly on his arm as he leaned toward her, saying something I couldn't hear. I froze, unable to move or speak. My worst fears were confirmed. Lila wasn't just hiding something. She was actively betraying me. I stepped back into the elevator, but Lila's eyes met mine through the narrowing gap of the elevator doors. I felt my heart lurch. Her expression shifted from carefree to stunned, her laughter dying on her lips. She called out, "Jason," her voice sharp with disbelief. Panic surged through me. I couldn't face her right then. Not here, not in this hotel. not with Ethan standing just a few feet away from her. Before she could reach me, I pressed the button for the ground floor, and the elevator doors sealed shut, cutting off her voice mid-call. The ride down felt like it lasted an eternity. My thoughts raced, each one more chaotic than the last. What excuse would she give? How would she try to spin this? My stomach churned as I stepped out into the lobby, my only instinct to get as far away as possible. By the time I reached my car, my phone was buzzing relentlessly. It was Lila. I ignored the first call, but it rang again within seconds. My hands trembled as I slid into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel tightly. I couldn't think straight, couldn't breathe, but I knew answering now would only lead to more confusion, more lies. I turned on the engine, trying to steady myself, but the phone rang a third time. This time, I picked it up, anger mixing with fear as I swiped to answer. "What?" I snapped, not bothering to hide the raw edge in my voice. "What the hell was that, Jason?" she demanded, her tone sharp and angry. "Why were you even there? Were you following me? You're seriously asking me why I'm here?" I shot back, my voice rising. "I should be asking you the same damn thing. What are you doing at a hotel with him?" Her voice tightened, almost growling through the phone. "We are not doing this over the phone. You don't get to show up uninvited, jump to conclusions, and then run away like a coward." "Jump to conclusions?" I echoed, incredulous. "I saw enough, Lila. You think I'm just imagining things?" She ignored my question, her tone cold and commanding. "We will talk about this at home, Jason. Be there when I get back." The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at the phone in disbelief. The audacity, the nerve she had to act like this was somehow my fault, as if she wasn't the one caught in the middle of something she couldn't explain. I dropped the phone onto the passenger seat and sat there for a moment, my mind a storm of emotions, rage, hurt, confusion. One thing was clear, this conversation at home was going to change everything. The hours dragged by after Lila's call. I tried reaching her multiple times, desperate for answers, but every call went straight to voicemail. Each unanswered ring fueled the storm of emotions inside me. Confusion, frustration, fear. I paced the living room, glancing at the clock every few minutes, replaying the scene at the hotel over and over in my mind. Finally, close to midnight, I heard the sound of her car pulling into the driveway. My pulse quickened, my heart hammering in my chest as I prepared to confront her. The front door swung open, and there she was, looking far too composed for someone caught in the middle of something so damning. She closed the door behind her with an almost deliberate slowness, setting her purse on the entryway table before turning to face me. Her expression was hard, her jaw tight, and I could see the fire in her eyes. "Really, Jason?" she said, her tone sharp and accusatory. "You think it's okay to follow me? To spy on me like some paranoid stalker?" I blinked, caught completely off guard. "What? Are you serious right now? After what I saw, you're blaming me?" "Damn right I am," she snapped, stepping closer, her voice rising. "You had no right to show up there. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? Ethan saw you, for God's sake. Do you know how unprofessional that looks?" "Unprofessional?" I said, my voice cracking with disbelief. "You're worried about looking unprofessional? Lila, you were at a hotel with another man. What do you expect me to think?" Her eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms. "I expect you to trust me, Jason. Something you clearly don't know how to do." "Trust?" I nearly shouted, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. "How can I trust you when you're sneaking around with him, lying about where you're going, refusing to answer my calls? And don't even try to tell me this was some innocent business meeting." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "You're delusional. You've built this whole story in your head, and now you're acting like some jealous, insecure man-child." The venom in her words stunned me. This wasn't the Lila I knew or thought I knew. I took a step back, trying to collect myself, but she wasn't done. "You keep pushing this, Jason, and I swear, you're going to regret it," she said, her voice dropping into a low, almost threatening tone. "Do you really want to go down this road? Think carefully before you say another word." I stared at her, completely at a loss. "Are you threatening me now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her lips curved into a faint, cold smile. "I'm telling you to stop acting like a fool. You're ruining everything for no reason." "Ruining everything?" I echoed, my chest tight. "You're the one who." Enough, she cut me off, her voice slicing through the air. This is my career, Jason. My reputation. And I won't let you destroy it because you can't handle your insecurities. I felt my knees weaken, my mind struggling to process her words. I'd expected guilt, an apology, anything resembling the woman I'd married. Instead, I was standing in front of someone who felt like a stranger, someone who didn't seem to care about the damage she'd done. I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands, unsure of what to say or do next. How had it come to this? How had we gone from a loving partnership to this cold, hostile standoff? The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Lila finally turned on her heel, heading upstairs without another word. I didn't follow. I couldn't. All I could do was sit there, staring at the empty space where she'd stood, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do now. The days that followed were a blur of tension and silence. Lila's behavior shifted even further. She barely acknowledged me when she was home, and when she wasn't, she was gone for hours at a time. She stopped telling me where she was going or when she'd be back. One night, after waiting up until almost midnight again, I heard the front door creak open. I stood in the kitchen, nursing a cold coffee that had long since lost its flavor. Lila walked in without a word, her face a mask of indifference. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady but failing to hide the frustration beneath it. She dropped her purse on the counter and didn't even look at me as she kicked off her shoes. "Out," she said simply. "Out where?" I pressed. She finally turned to me, her expression hard and unyielding. "Does it matter? Do I have to check in with you every time I leave the house?" "Yes, Lila, it matters." I shot back, the anger bubbling over. "We're married. You disappearing for hours without saying a word. It's not normal." She rolled her eyes, walking past me toward the stairs. "Jason, you're suffocating me. Maybe you should figure out how to occupy yourself instead of obsessing over me." The words hit like a slap, and I was too stunned to reply before she disappeared upstairs. The days turned into weeks, and the pattern didn't change. She came home late, ignored my calls half the time, and when she did answer, her replies were short and dismissive. We barely spoke anymore, and when we did, it was cold and strained. The nights were the worst. Lila stopped coming to bed at the same time as me. She'd stay downstairs for hours, scrolling through her phone or working on her laptop, only coming up after I'd fallen asleep, or pretending to. Even when we did share the bed, there was a chasm between us, a gap both physical and emotional. The intimacy that had once defined our marriage was gone. She no longer touched me, no longer looked at me with warmth or affection. I couldn't remember the last time we'd made love, and every night I lay awake, the silence between us deafening. I tried to reach out, try to talk to her, but every attempt was met with resistance. "I'm busy, Jason," she'd say, brushing me off. "Not everything's about you." I started questioning everything about myself. What I'd done wrong, what I could have done differently. But no matter how I twisted it in my mind, I kept circling back to the same conclusion. Lila had already checked out of our marriage. One evening, I decided to confront her again. She'd come home late, as usual, her hair slightly disheveled and her makeup smudged. I stood by the doorway, blocking her path. "We need to talk, Lila," I said firmly. She sighed, exasperated. "I'm tired, Jason. Can we not do this tonight?" "No," I said, my voice shaking with the effort to stay calm. "We're doing this now. What's going on with you? Where do you go every night? Why won't you answer my calls?" Her expression turned icy. "I'm not doing this, Jason. If you can't trust me, that's your problem, not mine. I can't trust you because you've given me every reason not to," I said, my voice rising. "You're hiding something, Lila, and you know it. Why can't you just be honest with me?" She glared at me, her eyes burning with anger. "You want honesty? Fine. I don't want to do this anymore, Jason. I'm tired of you constantly questioning me, constantly trying to control me. Maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe it's you." The words left me speechless, my stomach sinking as her meaning became clear. She wasn't just talking about the argument. She was talking about us. Before I could respond, she brushed past me, heading upstairs without another word. I stood there, rooted to the spot, feeling like the ground beneath me had given way. It was then I realized whatever was left of our marriage was slipping through my fingers, and I had no idea how to hold on to it. The gaslighting wore me down to the core. Lila's coldness and manipulations had chipped away at my sense of reality, leaving me questioning everything I thought I knew. The emotional toll was unbearable. I barely recognized myself anymore, a shadow of the person I'd once been. In desperation, I decided to see a therapist. It felt like a last-ditch effort to reclaim some sense of stability in my crumbling life. Sitting in that small, dimly lit office, I poured out everything. The late nights, the lies, the distance, the betrayal I felt but couldn't prove. The therapist nodded, offering words of comfort and tools to help me navigate the chaos. But no amount of mindfulness exercises or grounding techniques could fix what was broken. Meanwhile, my life continued its downward spiral. Work became an afterthought. My focus and energy were sapped by the constant tension at home. Friends started drifting away, unable to deal with the constant cloud of negativity hanging over me. Even my family, once my biggest support system, began to sound exasperated every time I called to vent about Lila. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was a Saturday afternoon, and my best friend, Mark, came over unannounced. Mark and I had known each other since college, and he'd always been my rock, a blunt but loyal guy who didn't sugarcoat anything. He took one look at me, sitting on the couch in a t-shirt I hadn't changed in 3 days, surrounded by takeout containers, and shook his head. "Jason, this has to stop," he said, crossing his arms. I looked up at him, startled by the intensity in his voice. "What are you talking about?" He gestured around the room. "This. You. Lila's turned you into someone I don't even recognize. You're drowning, man, and you're not doing a damn thing to save yourself." I opened my mouth to protest, but he cut me off. "Don't even start. You've been letting her walk all over you, gaslighting you, making you feel like you're the problem. You're not. She is, and you're letting her win because you're too scared to take control." "Mark, it's not that simple." "It is that simple," he snapped. "You need to snap out of it, Jason. Pull yourself together and figure out what's really going on. You've been chasing your tail for months while she's out there doing God knows what." His words hit me like a slap in the face, but he wasn't wrong. I was drowning, and I hadn't done anything to fight back. "What do you expect me to do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You hire someone who can get you the answers you need," he said firmly. "A private investigator. Someone who can give you the truth. Cold, hard, and undeniable. You can't fix this until you know what you're dealing with." I stared at him, the idea settling uneasily in my mind. Hiring a PI felt extreme, invasive, like something out of a bad movie. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, unsure of what was real and what wasn't. Mark placed a hand on my shoulder, his tone softening. "Look, I'm not saying this will be easy, but you deserve to know the truth, Jason. Whatever it is, you need to stop living in the dark." That night, after Mark left, I sat down at my computer and searched for local private investigators. It felt surreal, typing out the words, but I knew it was the right thing to do. The next morning, I made the call. A woman named Dana answered, her voice calm and professional. I explained my situation as succinctly as I could, feeling both shame and relief as the words spilled out. "I'll take the case," she said after a moment's pause. "But you need to be prepared for whatever I find. Sometimes the truth hurts more than the lies." "I'm ready," I lied. As I hung up the phone, a strange sense of calm washed over me. For the first time in months, I felt like I was taking a step, however small, toward reclaiming control of my life. The investigation began almost immediately after I signed the contract with Dana. She was sharp, efficient, and no-nonsense, with a demeanor that made me trust her judgment, even when her plans pushed me far out of my comfort zone. First came the basics. She installed a discreet tracking app on Lila's phone. It was undetectable and provided real-time GPS updates. Dana assured me it was standard procedure, but I felt a pang of guilt watching that little red that move around the city on my computer screen. "It's not about violating her privacy," Dana said during one of our meetings. "It's about uncovering the truth. You deserve that." The guilt didn't subside, but I nodded anyway. Next, Dana handed me a small, sleek device that looked like an ordinary thumb drive. "This is a data logger," she explained. "Plug it into her laptop or desktop for a few minutes. It will mirror her emails, social media accounts, and browsing history to a secure folder I can access." "Emails?" I echoed, my stomach twisting. "That feels invasive." Her expression softened slightly. I understand, but if she's hiding something, this is where we'll find it. Are you ready to go all in or not? I nodded reluctantly, taking the device. That night, while Lila showered, I plugged it into her laptop. My hands shook as I navigated through her files, trying to act casual in case she came out early. It only took a few minutes, but those minutes felt like hours. Dana didn't stop there. She suggested we install a hidden camera in the living room, a tiny device cleverly disguised as a photo frame. It's unlikely she's bringing someone into the house, Dana admitted, but it's better to be thorough. The hardest part was the financial deep dive. Dana had me collect every piece of information I could find. Bank statements, credit card bills, even receipts I'd shoved into a drawer and forgotten about. It was meticulous, grueling work, made worse by the constant fear of being caught. People slip up with money all the time, Dana said as we sifted through spreadsheets late one evening. If she's hiding something, there's a good chance it'll show up here. One evening, Dana asked me to help her plant a GPS tracker in Lila's car. The plan was to place it beneath the driver's seat, tucked out of view. I waited anxiously in the garage while Dana worked, her movements precise and quick. The whole thing took less than 5 minutes, but my nerves were shot by the time we finished. The sheer weight of the operation was exhausting. I had to maintain a facade of normalcy around Lila, acting as though nothing was wrong while secretly working with Dana to gather evidence. Every lie I told, every moment I spent pretending, chipped away at me. There were moments when I almost called the whole thing off. Once, I nearly confessed to Lila in a fit of frustration, demanding answers outright. But Dana's words echoed in my head. You need proof, Jason. Otherwise, she'll twist the narrative and you'll be back at square one. The emotional toll was immense. I felt like a stranger in my own life, sneaking around in the shadows, orchestrating a secret investigation into the woman I once trusted implicitly. But as the days turned into weeks, the puzzle pieces began falling into place. Emails, locations, credit card charges. All of it painted a picture I wasn't ready to face. Dana kept me updated regularly, her tone professional but cautious. We're getting closer, she said during one of our check-ins. I'm following a lead that might confirm everything, but I need a few more days. I barely slept those nights, my mind racing with possibilities. The truth was within reach, and yet I wasn't sure if I could handle what it would reveal. Dana delivered the results in a way that left no room for ambiguity. She called me to her office on a cold Friday evening, her tone measured but laced with a heaviness I wasn't prepared for. Jason, I compiled everything, she said. You should prepare yourself. This isn't going to be easy. I sat across from her, my hands clammy as she opened a folder on her desk. Inside was a series of printouts, screenshots, and photographs that laid bare the extent of Lila's betrayal. The text messages were damning. Lila and Ethan had been exchanging flirtatious texts for months, their conversations growing increasingly intimate. Ethan, can't wait to see you again. Last night was perfect. I'm still thinking about you in that dress. And out of it winking-faced, Lila, your bad face-blowing kiss, I'm counting down the hours until Saturday. I'll wear something you'll love. Dana scrolled through hundreds of texts, some mundane, but many filled with suggestive comments, inside jokes, and explicit details about their encounters. The emails were worse. Lila had been using a private email address I'd never known about, coordinating meetups with Ethan under the guise of work trips. In one particularly incriminating exchange, they discussed booking a romantic getaway at a luxury resort in Napa Valley. On a weekend, she told me she was attending a blogger retreat. Attached to the email were receipts for the hotel, spa treatments, and a private dinner for two. Her social media accounts revealed carefully curated posts designed to maintain her image of a hardworking influencer, but the hidden interactions with Ethan told a completely different story. The GPS data painted a chilling picture. Dana showed me a map dotted with locations, hotels, secluded parks, and even Ethan's apartment in San Diego. The timestamps matched the nights Lila had claimed to be at networking events or working late. Then came the surveillance footage. My stomach churned as Dana slid a USB drive across the table. You don't have to watch this now, she said gently. But I needed to know. Back home, in the suffocating silence of the living room, I plugged the drive into my laptop. The video was clear, captured by the hidden camera in the living room. It showed Lila and Ethan entering the house one evening while I was away on a work trip. They moved with a familiarity that made my chest tighten, their laughter echoing through the room as they embraced. What followed was undeniable, a graphic confirmation of what I'd suspected but hadn't been ready to see. The most shocking discovery came last. Dana handed me a stack of papers, her expression grim. "This is where things take a darker turn," she said. Lila had opened a hidden bank account months ago, funneling money from our shared account into it. At first, the transactions were small, just a few $100s here and there, but over time, they grew bolder. Thousands of dollars had been siphoned away, funding her lavish escapades with Ethan. I stared at the account summary, my mind reeling. She stole from me. I whispered, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Dana Nadid. It's not uncommon in cases like this. She probably thought you wouldn't notice with the way your household finances were structured. I flipped through the documents, noting extravagant charges, designer clothes, expensive dinners, and even gifts clearly meant for Ethan. Dana leaned back, her face etched with sympathy. "I know this is a lot to process, Jason," she said, "but now you have everything. The truth, the evidence, it's all here. What you do next is up to you." I sat in stunned silence, staring at the damning pile of evidence. Every doubt, every suspicion, every nightmare I'd had over the past months was now confirmed in excruciating detail. The woman I had built my life with hadn't just betrayed me. She'd dismantled everything we'd shared piece by piece, right under my nose. And now, I had to decide how to confront her with the truth. The drive home was surreal, like I was moving through a fog. Dana's words echoed in my head, her calm professionalism a stark contrast to the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I replayed the evidence in my mind, the texts, the emails, the GPS locations, the video, and that hidden bank account. It was all too much. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same as always, calm, welcoming, a facade of normalcy. But I knew what waited inside. I knew who waited inside. Lila was in the living room when I walked in, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. She didn't look up as I entered. "You're home late," she said casually, her tone indifferent. I stood in the doorway, the weight of everything pressing down on me. My voice was low, trembling with barely controlled fury. "We need to talk." She finally looked up, her expression shifting slightly, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face. "Can it wait? I'm exhausted." "No, it can't," I said, stepping further into the room. "Not this time, Lila." Her brow furrowed, and she put her phone down, sitting up straighter. "What's with the tone? What's going on?" I dropped a folder onto the coffee table, the contents spilling out slightly. Screenshots of messages, bank statements, a copy of her secret accounts transactions. Her eyes flicked to the papers, and for the first time in months, I saw something that looked like genuine fear in her expression. What is this?" she asked, her voice unsteady. "It's everything," I said, my voice cold. "Everything you've been hiding from me. All the lies, all the cheating, all the money you've stolen from me." She froze, her face draining of color. "Jason, Don't," I snapped, cutting her off. "Don't even try to lie to me right now. I've seen the texts, the emails, the hotel bookings. I've seen the video, Lila." Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked like a deer caught in headlights, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw shame flash across her face. I pressed on, the anger I'd held back for so long finally spilling over. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me? To us? You didn't just betray me. You destroyed everything we built. You stole from me, Lila. You took money from our accounts to fund your little affair." Her expression hardened suddenly, her fear giving way to defiance. "I didn't steal anything," she said, her voice rising. "That money was mine too. I've contributed just as much as you have to this marriage. Don't act like you're some victim." "You're kidding me," I said, disbelief cutting through my rage. "You think that justifies stealing thousands of dollars and spending it on him? You think that justifies lying to my face every day while you sneak around with Ethan?" She stood now, her arms crossed, glaring at me. "You don't understand. You've been so distant, so wrapped up in your own world, Jason. I needed something else, someone who made me feel alive again." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "So, this is my fault now? You're blaming me for what you've done?" Her silence spoke volumes. And for the first time, I saw her for who she really was: selfish, calculating, and utterly unrepentant. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "We're done, Lila," I said, my voice cold and final. "This marriage is over. I'll be contacting a lawyer tomorrow, and I want you out of this house by the end of the week." Her eyes widened, and she stepped forward, her tone shifting to something almost pleading. "Jason, wait. Don't do this. We can work through this. I made a mistake, but I still love you." "No," I said firmly, stepping back. "You don't get to play the love card now. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done any of this." She stood there, staring at me, her face a mix of anger, fear, and something that might have been regret. But I didn't care anymore. The divorce battle was nothing short of brutal. When I told Lila I wanted her out of the house and filed the paperwork, she didn't take it lying down. What could have been a simple, mutual agreement turned into an all-out war. She contested everything: our assets, the house, even custody of our dog, Max, whom she barely acknowledged when we were together. Her lawyer painted me as controlling and paranoid, trying to spin the narrative that I had driven her to her mistake by being neglectful and unloving. But thanks to Dana's airtight evidence, her attempts at shifting blame fell apart in court. I had everything: the messages, emails, financial transactions, GPS logs, and most damning of all, the video of her affair with Ethan. My lawyer laid it out methodically, leaving no room for doubt about who had betrayed the marriage. Lila's lawyer tried to suppress the video, claiming it was an invasion of privacy, but the judge allowed it, noting its relevance to the case. When the footage played in the courtroom, Lila couldn't even meet my gaze. Ethan wasn't present. He had slithered away from the drama long before the trial, but his absence only highlighted how alone Lila was in her defense. By the end of the trial, the judgment was in my favor. I kept the house, most of our shared assets, and Max. Lila was left with her car, her personal belongings, and the tarnished remnants of her reputation. She'd even been ordered to pay me back the money she had siphoned into her hidden bank account, though I doubted I'd ever see a dime of it. But even after the court ruled, her refusal to acknowledge her wrongdoing and her audacious attempts to play the victim fueled my anger. I wanted closure, but more than that, I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions in every corner of her life. That's when I decided to take things one step further. Thanks to Dana's data logger, I had access to all of Lila's social media accounts: her Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. It was a treasure trove of influence she had built over the years, and I knew exactly how to wield it. I started with her Instagram. Logging in late one night, I uploaded a series of posts to her feed. Screenshots of her texts with Ethan, excerpts from her emails, and even snippets of the financial transactions that showed how she funded their affair with money stolen from her shared account. The captions were cold and factual. "To everyone who has supported Lila, here's what you didn't know. This is the truth behind the influencer you idolize." Then I turned to her YouTube channel, where I posted a video compilation of the evidence, paired with a brief caption: "The story of betrayal, how trust was broken and careers were destroyed." Finally, I used her TikTok account to share the video footage of her and Ethan. I kept it tame, no explicit content, but it was enough to confirm her infidelity beyond doubt. Within hours, her followers started flooding the comments with outrage and disgust. I didn't stop there. I posted the same evidence on my personal TikTok, detailing my side of the story. I told the world about the hidden bank account, the gaslighting, and the lies that spanned months. The video went viral almost overnight, with thousands of comments supporting me and condemning her. Lila's career crumbled faster than I expected. Her sponsorships dropped her immediately, issuing statements distancing themselves from her unethical behavior. Her followers plummeted by the tens of thousands, with former fans posting videos calling her out and declaring her canceled. She tried to fight back, posting tearful apologies and claiming she'd been misunderstood, but it was too late. The internet had turned on her, and her once loyal audience wanted nothing to do with her. I heard from mutual acquaintances that Lila had to move out of her rented apartment when the brand deals dried up and the rent became unmanageable. She was practically a pariah in the influencer world, her name synonymous with deceit and betrayal. I didn't feel guilt, not after everything she put me through. She could have chosen to part ways peacefully, but instead, she dragged me through hell in court and tried to play the victim. She deserved every ounce of the fallout. For the first time in months, I felt free, truly free. I'd lost so much because of her, but I'd also gained something invaluable: the ability to rebuild my life without the weight of her lies holding me back. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. New cheating wife stories tomorrow. Goodbye.